Go.
So I'm Jenn Har. I'm at U High with Miss Morris.
I'm Jacki Crawford. I'm at Normal West with Mrs. Koppel.
I'm Melissa Marcucci. I'm at Bloomington High School with Ms. Robbins.
I'm Missy Lee, and I'm at Parkside Junior High with Mr. Nevels.
And this is Pete Talk.
All right, so first we are going to discuss what our clinical has been like. So Jen, can you describe what your clinical has been like so far?
1 hour, I'm just in her office doing either typing notes up or adding grades in the book, and then the second hour I'm either continuing to do that or I just observe because there's 16 people in there also. So I'm just observing their teach also. Or I only seen my students one time before I taught the lesson, so I've not been in the classroom very much, just more behind the scenes stuff.
So as of right now, how many times have you seen your students?
3 times.
3 times.
One being my teacher and one being today. So.
And then how many weeks have you been there?
10, almost.
This will be
8 weeks, yeah.
8 weeks. Wow.
So that's been my teach was went well, but it was a nutrition one, so it's all based off and they're all overweight girls, 9 girls, and so it was obviously a touchy subject anyway, and she wanted me to expand on their meals, but I didn't know how personally it because I don't know the girls personally, and I don't know their pushing points, so that was difficult, but I mean, it's what it is, I guess, but I think that if they had the clinical hour, they should have. She should either be in the classroom more or more days in the classroom because just the 1 day a week isn't really enough to teach a class one time, I think. But
Right.
Yeah, that sounds very difficult.
My clinicals, 1 day a week I'm with an advanced aquatics class, and the other day a week I'm with a swim PE class. But swim PE, really, they only swim 3 days a week. So Mondays when I'm with them, they do activity day, which is kind of odd because they'll do a soccer unit, but it's over a couple weeks, but really it's only, if it's 3 weeks long, they're really just doing 3 days of soccer.
Mm-hmm.
So she does pre-test and post-test because she just joined the Spark, but I really don't see how you can get accurate readings off that if they're only doing it 3 times out of 3 weeks.
Yeah, they don't really get the experience that they need.
Yeah.
how about you, Melissa?
For me, I would say that my CT did a really good job of getting me involved in the class right away. The first day of class, I have 50 students in both of my classes, so getting to know them on first name basis is very difficult. I still only know about 10 of their names, but she gave me her attendance book, and every day I go in there, I do attendance, I try to get to know them, and then I've taught 6 lessons with her so far.
Wow.
So
that's a lot. That's
yeah,
nice.
it's really nice. It was a nice transition and eased me into it kind of,
Yeah.
and definitely made it easier to connect with all of the students and be more comfortable teaching in front of them.
So do you co-teach? Did you co-teach, or was it just more like
No, it was for our volleyball lesson, which was the main one that I taught because I was there for all 3 weeks of that lesson. She would tell me, oh, okay, today we're going to learn how to pass. So I would get in front of the students and I would go through the cues for passing, and then we would do a few passing drills and activities, and then that would be for the first half of class. The second half of class, I'd break them up into teams, and they would get into kind of a small tournament.
So it's on the spot kind of thing, oh, today you're going to teach.
A few of them have been on the spot, yes. When she had me coach or teach soccer, I showed up my 3rd week of class there, and she asked me to teach a soccer lesson. So I just kind of assumed that my students have all played soccer before, and I was very surprised to only find out that 10 students out of my 50 have ever picked up a soccer ball. So that kind of set me back a little bit because 1, I wasn't even prepared to teach, and 2, half of them have never even picked up a soccer ball. So
I've kind of had similar experiences. When I first walked into Parkside Junior High, they were in an archery unit, and he just introduced me to the students and had me do whistle codes for them. So it was 1 whistle meant, step up, 2, pick up your bow, pick up your arrow, 3, load your arrow, and shoot when you're ready. So that kind of got me comfortable with the students and got to know them, and they were respecting me more so then. My teacher is retiring soon, and he never fails to tell me that every single lesson. So on the day that I taught, I actually wasn't planned to teach. I go in an hour before I teach for the 8th graders, and then I teach 6th graders. Completely different kids. I mean, different grade levels, everything, but really different kids. The 8th graders are a lot more competitive. They're kind of hard on each other. whereas the 6th graders are more accepting of each other and just kind of more so they interact with each other better. So before I taught, the 8th graders had to run as a punishment, which shouldn't be done in physical activity or physical education, because it's showing them that like physical activity is not necessarily a good thing. It's used as punishment. So as they're running their laps, I'm telling my CT about, like I'm planning on doing this. I've kind of done this lesson before with students at Metcalf, this and that, everything was really successful with them. So my 6th graders come in, and I lead them through exercises every single day, and they listen, they respect me. They kind of confuse me with another student, Sierra. One day they were like, have you ever been here before? And I was like, yes, I have. Have you had red hair? And I was like, no, I've never dyed my hair before. And they were like, really? And I was like, it's been like the 7th week. Yes, I've been here the whole time. And so then I lead him through warm-ups, and he looks at me and he goes, all right, well, go ahead and teach. I was like, okay. Thankfully, I've done the lesson before, so I mean, it went well, but I mean, comparing it from Metcalf to Parkside, I had 5 tasks planned for my lesson. With Metcalf, I got through all 5 of my tasks easily. And then at Parkside, I only got through 2 of my tasks. And the first one, as a volleyball unit, was the ready stance, so not very difficult. And then the second task was your partner tossing the ball to you and you forearm passing it back. It was mind-blowing to me how difficult it was for the students at Parkside to grasp it. And then actually this past Monday, there's a student teacher from ISU, if you know Dan. He's student teaching, and he had 2 or 3 classes to himself to teach their volleyball unit. And what he does is he has them get into groups of 5 or 6, and they basically just do little 5-7 minute games of volleyball with each other, and they switch. So then it comes time for our 6th grade class, and warm-ups are done. I do warm-ups, and he goes, okay, well, go ahead. And I was like, okay. And in my mind, I'm like, do you want me to take the lesson that the 8th graders just have done, because that's what they normally do, or do you want me to come up with something completely on my own right now? So naturally, he was like, all right, well, we're just going to do the same thing that they've done. Yeah. So this clinical experience has been like really up in the air. Sometimes I feel like I'm just kind of standing off the side. Sometimes I feel like I'm his like best friend to like gab with and like complain about things with. And then sometimes I feel like he just doesn't want to teach. And he's like, all right, take it. And I'm like, okay. So I said I taught my volleyball lesson. What other lessons have you guys taught?
My lesson was pretty much just a pre-test for the soccer unit. So it was a very easy lesson. All I did was introduce the skills they would be pre-tested on, demonstrate them, and then I just pretty much walked around the gym, monitored them as they were doing the pre-test, because it took the entire time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mine was basically the girl, 216 student, taught a nutrition lesson before me, and so the next week I was following up with that, and they had them all good food, so it was more of a discussion of like their food log, and like carbs, proteins, and fats, and fiber, and like water if they're like, in their diets, and just like a discussion on how they were doing and how they felt. And then today they was due a paper, so I'm reading those now, and those are interesting. But it's pretty like it was easy to do, but it was just like difficult to know like how they would respond to the discussion portion of it, which they liked it, but
yeah, like I said, I taught a soccer lesson, a volleyball lesson. I did fitness testing with the students, and then I taught a shook ball lesson with the students as well. But I think one of the main things that I can take away from this experience for student teaching would just be knowing that everything is unpredictable. I mean, I showed up to classes not knowing that I'm supposed to teach, and she's like, okay, just come up with a lesson and go. And so I'm, frantically trying to go through my head, like, different lessons that some of these students can do and, hopefully help other students, because the class that I'm in is not very skilled. A lot of them, which surprised me, a lot of them are taking 2 to 3 PE classes a day because they have failed PE classes. Wow. And one of the things about that, to go along with, my teacher is one of the only PE teachers there that takes off points for not dressing, and then that's 10 points for the day, and then she has a ton of students that don't dress, so that's why they fail.
Nice. Does she still let them participate or no?
They're sitting out, and then she has a rule, 3 no dresses is a detention. When she's had many students go past the 3, so she's called their parents, she has given them referrals. One student just got off of an in-school suspension for this.
Oh,
Yeah, so she is
I feel
very tough with that.
Isn't Bloomington like a low-income school too? Like,
It
I feel like
is.
that should be the main focus of what you're
I
creating
totally-
too. 'Cause
yeah, I
maybe they
agree.
don't have the resources for
Right.
it.
Yep.
My teacher, she takes off for not dressing. She does 10 points a day too, and she will take off total points for not dressing, but the kids can still participate, but they earn no points. So, and like the kid will come in, he's like, oh crap, I forgot my clothes today, and she's like, okay, well, that's your points. And he's like, yeah, can I still, do what we're doing? She's like, yeah, that's fine.
That's
What
surprising.
sense does
You
that
think
make?
You'd be like, oh, I'm not doing it. if I
So,
don't get
yeah,
points.
and plus she should, why does that make sense to her then to take 10 off?
Right. Like,
She's
why are you
doing it.
emphasizing the dress
It
Yeah.
completely
if you're
takes
still, yeah.
It completely takes away the importance of what physical education
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
your students moving.
Yeah, and he wanted to.
And
He just forgot his clothes.
and having your students, run around and get sweaty and get stinky in their clothes might be a
Teach
positive
them.
reinforcement
Yeah.
to bring your gym clothes so that you
exactly.
don't
Yeah.
stink
Yeah,
the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you used to bring whatever you want to bring for
Yeah.
that day, so they're
Yeah.
pretty good about that.
That's how
Mr.
that
Knuckles, if he had he pointed out a couple last time I was there because there's 2 classes within it, and he pointed out Miss Knight's class, everyone dresses well in his class or in her class. They show up, they do everything, they're in their full uniform, and he's like, look at that kid, look at that kid, look at that kid. He's like, they're not dressing, and in my mind I'm like, what are you doing about that? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
good that he still allows them to participate
Yeah.
and doesn't really dock them for their grade for it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's unnecessary and that's not the purpose of PE. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, well, why don't you do something?
Yeah.
I know you're
Right.
retiring in 2016, but I mean, it's not 2016 yet,
No.
so.
It's got ways to go
Yeah.
still.
I think
Yeah.
it's still I think bringing clothes, that kind of having tennis shoes, that's my pet peeve. That's still part of their responsibility
Yeah.
for the class. So I see maybe a couple points, or maybe you give them warnings, and then okay, after the 3rd time you gotta finally dock 2 points or something like that. But
Mhm.
I
And
don't
I
know.
think in the affective domain too, because your attitude
Yeah.
towards physical activity, right there's your dressing,
Yeah.
a little piece of it can be the dressing or whatever.
Yeah.
Just respecting the fact that this is a class, you come prepared, in math.
Yeah.
Remember calculator or paper pen, obviously you can't participate in math and then you get in trouble. So why not PE? Somewhat, a small
Yeah.
percentage of it.
Yeah, tiny bit. I
Right.
understand that too.
Man, I mean, for her to have so many students failing her classes right now
Yeah,
and
that's
having to retake them,
that's when it
just kind of
shouldn't be a factor.
exactly it kind of makes me think that she should reevaluate her grading scale and look at it is what's the most important factor here, getting your
Yeah.
students active or having them dress.
I feel like even administration should have stepped in by now and
Yeah.
say, maybe we need to take a look at this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Yep, and my teacher is the only one who requires them to wear the actual school uniform instead of just any old t-shirt, any pair of shorts, where if they're not in the purple shorts and the white t-shirt, that's 0 points. Which, in my opinion, if they're there and they're dressed for activity, no matter what they're wearing, it
Yeah.
should qualify as dressed for class.
As long as it's safe, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Missy, what would you say your experience has been like in the 219 class in general?
I'd say it's very challenging. It's definitely been different. It's more so been challenging the way of trying to integrate technology into all my lessons, because when you think of PE, you don't think of technology. You think of running around, being physically active, maybe an online test every now and then, maybe blogging, which I have integrated more into my lessons. Sometimes I question it because the main goal of PE is to get students moving. And there's a lot of concepts and things that we've learned within lecture and whatnot that, they do make sense and they are educationally valuable to students, but the only problem is it inhibits them from being physically active. So it kind of takes away from the main purpose of physical education. So I could see how teachers would, especially since PE is on the brink of getting cut from the programs, I could see that if we're not getting our students moving, they're going to be well, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, so why are we wasting our time and resources and students' academic value on a period that they're not getting the value that they're supposed to be getting out of it.
And I feel like the technology that is in PE, heart monitors and stuff, it's
Yeah.
expensive. So do they have the resources to even buy that kind of stuff? Those are the main technologies that can be used and be beneficial in the activity portion of it all. But if you don't have the resource for it, you can't do that at all.
Yeah.
Right.
At my school, they were going to do a unit using pedometers, and they went to pull out the pedometers, and they had 70 of them, and every single pedometer except for 2 was out of battery. And then they couldn't afford batteries for all of them, so they just totally didn't use that lesson at all.
It's I know for one of the lessons I was there for, they used pedometers. But you could tell the kids never used them. Like they had them in the wrong spots, and I wanted to be like, this is where they need to be. But it actually was a different teacher taking over our class because it was 2 classes combined, and it was her idea. So I was like, I feel like I can't say your pedometer is definitely not in the right spot right now. But I feel like if you have the technology, use it, educate your students on it so it can be used appropriately. Because I was just like, this is not doing anything right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Nevels does utilize technology in his classroom with heart rate monitors, and they don't have enough for every single student. So what he did is he set up a rotation plan. So every time they have a fitness day, which is a Tuesday or Thursday, there's like 4 or 5 different rotations. So there's about 3 or 4 different students that will wear that heart rate monitor for that day. And so it's not every single student is wearing them, but I mean at some point in time they are. And he has little signs up on the walls for how to work the heart rate monitors, so that it's like, you're not consistently telling the students how to do it, because even in high school they would tell us, and I mean I don't think I ever programmed mine right, and there was times where our grade up that day was based off of if your heart was in your heart rate zone. And obviously for students who are more fit, it's more difficult to get your heart rate up into that zone, and if your watch isn't appropriately calibrated, you're not going to get your points that day. So it's kind of like technology can also inhibit learning in a way.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that.
Well, that is all the time we have today. Thanks for tuning in to Pete Talk. Until next week.
Woo!